sure. And in some ways, there's like this little trajectory as we read the 5th chapter there. You know, it starts with blessing, and then the proclamation, you are light of the world, you are salt for the earth, telling us who we are. And I can't help but think of the people Jesus was teaching, was given Torah to. That they were poor, destitute people. Many of them had been sick, and Jesus had cured them. But they still bore the stigma of illness. And to hear that they are light of the world, that they are salt for the earth, would be very good news indeed. Astounding. Because, especially as Galileans, who lived in a land that had poor land and poor rain. They were the poorest of the people of Israel. And when Rome came through 60 years previously to occupy it, it was the Galileans who suffered the most, whose men were crucified. And any uprising to try to throw off Roman oppression was met very harshly. People were crucified. They were dealt with, as we say, with extreme prejudice. So he's talking to people who are powerless. But what he's doing, especially in this last part of the Gospel of Matthew, is giving them dignity, giving them their dignity back, and how to maintain that dignity in the midst of insults and oppression and injustice. And it kind of comes in some ways in the 5th chapter to a climax here. So when Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, but I say to you, do not resist the evildoer." He's not saying in this one, just be a doormat and let people walk over you. Just be very passive. No. Actually, there's some specific actions that he was telling them that they could take, which makes a lot of sense in their context. So there is resist the evildoer, but not violently. And that in a sense, because there were the zealots, there was a part of the Pharisees that have decided that the sword is the way to deal with Rome. And there were others who said, no, let's just, especially among the Pharisees, we'll just keep to ourselves, keep our head down, worship God as best we can. Jesus said, no, there's another way. To show that the one who is doing evil to you, insulting you, abusing you, to show to them that you are human, that you do have dignity. And, as Jesus commanded, you love them. Not easy to do, but you love them. Now, one thing as we consider these, Jesus had said earlier, you all heard it, not one little bit of the law will pass away until all is fulfilled. Well, that word law, of course, means Torah, which in Judaism and throughout the Hebrew Scriptures means more than just the first 5 books of the Bible. For the Torah means also, besides law, it means way, it means direction, it means pointing out the direction to go and going in that direction. In our psalm it says, teach me, O Lord, the way of your statutes. And so the Torah is instructions about how to live faithfully in God's presence, in whatever circumstances they may find themselves. And throughout the history of Israel, things change. God had given instruction to Abraham, for example, about how to live, and even before Abraham. And then, coming of the Exodus, and the people of God were wandering for those 40 years in the desert. They got instructions about how to live with one another as a nomadic people, wandering around. They were also given the 10 Commandments, which through all the various adaptations of Torah, the 10 Commandments still remain. But even how you implement them changes. And when they crossed over the Jordan into the Promised Land and became a settled people with farming and villages and cities, again, more Torah, more instructions about how to live with each other, be kind to each other, to have communities that give life, that are healing, that are reconciling, that thrive. I think in our reading from Leviticus, where it talks about, when your harvest, don't reap the whole field. Leave the edges, leave the gleanings. Don't take every grape off your vineyard. You leave some for others. But clearly that is addressed to a farming kind of people. And that wasn't happening while they're wandering around the desert. And then other changes came when they were forced into exile, into Babylon, and then the Assyrians came through, and the temple was destroyed. There's no way to follow the laws of temple worship. How do we worship God now? They were faithful in keeping the Sabbath. They were faithful in keeping the laws that they could. And they adapted their worship, and there was formed synagogues. The whole institution of synagogue worship, synagogue gathering, started in the exile. When they came back, they also needed more instructions in Ezra and Nehemiah. Okay, thank you. Nehemiah. We're giving more instructions on how they were to live in this land occupied now by all these foreigners and other Israelites who hadn't had any teaching for over a generation. And now, after Israel had yet been run over by the Greeks and now the Romans, how are they to live? And yeah, Jesus does up the ante, especially in our gospel today. But instead of seeking vengeance, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, find ways to restore the relationship as much as possible. And you don't have to let someone take away your dignity. To be generous as much as you can. And in some ways, I think, give to everybody who begs from you, and do not refuse anyone who borrows from you. I know full well, I've seen this myself, that those who are poor tend to be the most generous in giving. Because they understand that someone in need, when they need something because they're experiencing it also. But it also is something for all of us, to be generous in what we have, and to give to those who need, to give not just material things, but as they say, a hand up, as well as a hand out, because sometimes that's what it takes. And then he says, this part, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. That is not found anywhere in Scripture. It is probably a saying that has been going on for centuries, and certainly that is kind of like a base